Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. This is our fourth episode of the season, and we are beginning our 8th year of bracketology work and want to bring weekly updates to those who want to know where their favorite team stands in regards to the NCAA tournament. This podcast is for all you junkies out there who have March Madness all season long. We're able to create this new content thanks to sponsorships like that of Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo and the generous donations of our followers. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for creating our intro and outro music, and also to Jared Morris of the Assembly Call for inspiring us and teaching us about all of this technology that we use. And so it is time to get started about the most recent week. Joining me is Junior Cade Nelson, editor of Delphi Bracketology. Luke Smock is serving our school in the concession stand for a girls' game, so he will not be with us tonight. We like well-rounded people. So it'll be Cade and I talking some hoops. So there were some interesting games last week. Cade, what was your game of the week in college basketball? We may have a frozen Cade Nelson. So I will go on until we get that worked out. Technology is a wonderful thing. For me, it was Texas Southern versus Florida. Texas Southern winning 69-54 and upsetting Florida. Florida had a really decent resume, was in the top 6 seed, and then with that upset, I think dropped out of our bracket for the time being, and that was the game of the week. We're in finals week right now, and there's a lot of not a whole lot of games, maybe 1 or 2 games a night this week and last week in college basketball. So we're dealing with that as well this week. Cade was going to talk about West Virginia and Uconn, a couple teams that were played each other last week. That was his game of the week, and West Virginia needed that game. They were an 11 seed going into that game, beat Uconn, and were able to move. So while we're waiting for Cade to reconnect, if he can, our topic of the week is the net ranking. And what is the net ranking? Well, I don't know that many of us really know what the net ranking is, but it is a metric that the NCAA has designed and uses to rank teams and sort teams for purpose of selecting the NCAA bracket. It uses offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, strength of schedule, who you win, where you play games in a mathematical formula, and they rank teams 1 through 300 and how many ever teams are in NCAA. It is a sorting tool. You'll hear that over and over through college basketball. And what that does is it just ranks teams and qualifies the quality of wins and the quality of losses on your resume. So when bracketologists start talking about quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, and quad 4, those are net rankings. And according to the NCAA rules breakdown, you'll have to look them up. We don't have them memorized. But example, if you play a 1 through 30 team at home, it's going to count as a quad 1 game. If you play a 1 through 50 on the road neutral, then you will have a quad 1. And on the road, any team that you play 1 through 75 is a quad 1 win. And so those are accumulated over the years and over the season. And it's used as a sorting tool and a way to compare teams and put them into seeds 1 through 16. It is our belief that it is a rather solid metric. Every metric has its flaws. The RPI had its issues. The net has its issues too, with blowout wins really adding to your efficiency numbers. There's a lot of argument to add more of a strength of schedule component to all of the pieces. Right now, offense and defensive efficiency aren't gauged for who you play or where you play them. That's a separate factor. So there's not a perfect metric out there. Some people like Ken Palm, some people like Bart Torvik. This is a combination of all that kind of information gathered together. I think it is a better metric than the RPI. And so I know every year people get upset with it. But when Purdue comes out and was the number one ranked team in net, they're the number one team. Clearly, they have 3 quad one wins, and only a few other schools have 3. I think it's a lot more accurate a ranking. And I also think that um, there's going to be outliers. Wyoming was 11th early on in the net ranking. They had a tough loss to Arizona. They dropped to 18. You're going to see some outliers that are up high that maybe shouldn't be, and you're going to see some outliers that are lower than maybe where they should be. And we'll talk about that here on this show. For example, Arkansas right now is undefeated. Their net's in the 30s. I don't think that's where Arkansas will be seated if that was the case, even though they haven't played a lot of quad one games so far this year. So you're going to hear a lot about net. If you listen to us, you're going to hear a lot about net. If you turn into any college basketball podcast, that is how your team gets to the NCAA tournament, by having a good net ranking and beating teams with good net ranking. So currently we're going to put out a bracket on Friday. We had a main meeting today. We discussed it. There's a very small sample size. You're probably going to hear us talk about that until mid-January. 8 or 9 games is kind of tough to separate when you have teams with 0 quad one wins, 1, 2, and 3 quad one wins. There's a lot of teams that are very, very close. So teams move up and down rather quickly on our seed list and move up and down quite a bit on our a bracket. So we're going to go through, or right now I'm going to go through until Cade gets here, or if he doesn't, it's just a one-man show for tonight. And we're going to discuss our seeds, and I'll talk about a team in each one and just kind of give you the flavor. These seeds are not etched in stone. We do not do the prediction basis on who's going to win the next 5 games, 6 games. This is just where they're at right now. And what it does give you, fans of your teams, is just a picture of where they're at and where they need to go and what they need to accomplish going forward to either move up in the seeds or unfortunately, if your team has to move down, why is it moving down? So our number 1 seeds tomorrow will be Purdue, Duke, Gonzaga, and Baylor. Our only discussion was the number 4 seed. Baylor is undefeated right now, so we left them as a number 1 seed. They have some quad 1 and 2 wins, so that we think they're a worthy team at the number 1 seed line. At the number 2 seed line, we have Alabama, Michigan State, Arizona, and Kansas. Interesting, Michigan State has 2 losses, but they have a lot of quad 1 and 2 wins. Alabama has a great win over Gonzaga to offset a loss to Iona. Those are good, solid teams. Arizona is a team that wasn't expected to be this good this early, and they're moving up our rankings quite fast. 3 seeds, Wisconsin, Villanova, USC, LSU. Wisconsin's the surprise team, and I'm not sure that they'll stay very, very long. They should have gotten beat last night against Indiana and found a way to win. But they have, again, some good quality victories early, which comparing to other teams, it puts them in a position to be a top seed at this moment. Our number 4 seeds, Iowa State, Xavier, Auburn, UCLA. A couple surprises here. UCLA's a little lower than you would think. They only have the 1 loss to Gonzaga, but they have not had a lot of quality in comparison to some others. And Xavier has 3 quad 1 wins, and they've only had 1 loss. I think they're going to settle in a little bit lower as the season evens out, would be my prediction. 5 seeds, Ohio State, Uconn, Seton Hall, and Providence. The storyline on the 5 seed line here is the Big East. The Big East was thought to have 3 teams, maybe 4 by most preseason guesses, and they have just gone out and won some big games. As we're recording, Seton Hall's playing Texas. If they get that win, that's really going to look good. But the Big East was a Villanova, Uconn, and then maybe Xavier. And you look at here, there are 5 teams in our top 16 at the moment. What does that mean going forward? Well, when they play each other, they're all going to be, good losses, and they're all going to be really quality wins. And they're just going to start rolling in quad 1 and quad 2 wins by playing each other. Look for the Big East to have 5 or 6 and maybe even 7 teams. They're the surprise conference of the year for us here at Delphi Bracketology. Going to our 6 seeds, we have Texas Tech, BYU, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Uh, Texas Tech and Arkansas need to play people, and they will. And when they get those quad 1 wins, I think those 2 teams will likely move up. 7 seeds, Illinois, Houston, Texas, and Kentucky. This is the range of teams that either did not play well to start out, had a bad loss, or haven't really played anyone, and they kind of just got pushed down because everyone else has better wins at this time. Texas and Kentucky and Illinois, I think, are again better than 7 seeds. Illinois lost some games without some players. Kofi Coburn was out for 1 loss. They've had some guard injuries. So I think Illinois is going to settle in, had a nice win against Iowa. They have moved up to our 7 seed. Kentucky and Texas, this is their low mark, I would imagine, because once they start playing better teams and get those quad 1 wins, you'll see them in the top 4 seeds. Texas, again, is up 5 in the second half on the road against Seton Hall. That win right there would move them up quite a bit in our next bracket next week after we've already decided this week's information. We go to our 8 seeds. We have Iowa. We have Colorado State, San Francisco, Loyola. You'll find in the 8 and 9 seeds some of those smaller conference teams that are having great years. San Francisco is undefeated, and they deserve recognition right now. They play in the West Coast Conference, solid conference this year. That conference may get 3 or 4 teams. They're going to have to beat a St. Mary's, a BYU, a Gonzaga to stay in the tournament, or their resume will not be super strong, but we like them. Loyola has been traditionally really solid and has played a good schedule. Our 9 seeds, West Virginia, Marquette, North Carolina, Wake Forest. Here are 2 teams, West Virginia and Marquette, who won games last night that were good wins for them. West Virginia beating Uconn, Marquette beating Kansas State, jumped them up from maybe a 10, 11 seed up to a 9. Those teams have, I think that's about where they're going to settle, maybe 7 or 8. Marquette is another Big East team that is a surprise in some of the wins that they've had. North Carolina lost a couple tough games early, lost to Purdue, though. I think North Carolina has a chance to move up. And Wake Forest, we'll see that. We'll believe it when we see it throughout the year. Right now, they have a quad 1 win, which puts them in the bracket. That'll be a team here that we think will possibly fall out. Our 10 seeds, St. Mary's, UAB, Wichita State, Cincinnati, a couple teams here that are in because they've won some early games. UAB is one of them. Cincinnati is another. Those teams are going to have to fight really hard to stay in a bracket. Our 11 seeds, Louisville, Florida, Virginia Tech, Iona, Wyoming, and our last team in was Michigan. They have 3 losses. They haven't beaten anybody, but we had a hard time finding the team we really liked for the last at-large bid. So we put Michigan there. Iona as a mid-major has a great win against Alabama. That could last quite a long time in bracket selection for them to be selected as a mid-major. Right now, we think they're in. This line has some, Virginia Tech has 3 losses. Michigan has 3 losses. Florida has a loss to Texas Southern this week, an 0-7 Texas Southern. That's a quad 4 loss. Louisville lost to Furman without Coach Mack. So these are teams that we think are good. I think might even move up higher. Right now, they haven't played as well, which leads us to our first 4 out: Oklahoma, Minnesota, Mississippi State, and St. Louis, all quality clubs. Oklahoma lost a home game to Butler, which kind of knocked them out of this week's bracket. Minnesota lost at home to Michigan State. Nothing to be upset about there, but Minnesota had some nice wins early. We'll see if that continues. We don't expect it necessarily to continue in the Big Ten. So those are our at-large conversations that we had Thursday morning. Again, we were hoping to have Cade on here to give his impression of our conversations. He's also at our school right now supporting the girls basketball team, trying to enter on the Wi-Fi there, and he's having some difficulties with our school Wi-Fi. So I don't think we'll have Cade tonight. We'll just make this a shorter podcast. But these things move rapidly. Florida was higher, lost to Texas Southern. So if you have a team that's not listed here, or when you go to our bracket tomorrow, a team like Indiana, who is the 8th team out, a couple of close losses on the road, they just don't have a good win yet. They'll find it, and they'll need to in order to move in. Things can change quite a bit. So let's go to bracket impact games of the weekend. In case you're wanting to watch something this week that will be moving the bracket. Tonight, number 1 Purdue is playing against Rutgers. They're currently losing 33-27 with 3 minutes to go in the first half. That's a tough loss for the team who just got named number 1. But I think Purdue will bounce back. They're very talented, and it will end up winning this game. DePaul versus Louisville is another game, and I'm not sure DePaul's on the radar. They're 8-1, but Louisville is that team. Are they in? Are they not in? What kind of team is Louisville? This would be a game that they don't want to lose. I think losing this hurts Louisville. Winning this kind of just keeps them where they're at. Saturday is chock full of great games. Starts by Wisconsin versus Ohio State. We're going to find some of that upper tier Big Ten play kind of early on here in December with the conference games. That's a fantastic game. BYU versus Creighton. That's very important for BYU. Get a road win there against a really good Creighton team. Creighton's fighting to break into this good Big East season. Arkansas versus Oklahoma. That'll be a nice win for either team if they get it, bracket purposes. Here's one of my favorites just because it's a throwback to old man days, UCLA versus Marquette. Marquette's in our bracket, and they need to keep winning. What a big win that would be for them to get UCLA. UCLA is a little bit lower, as we said earlier, so any wins like this would help. St. Bonaventure versus Uconn, 2 teams we like. St. Bonaventure took a tough loss earlier in the season. That's why they're in, because they're the leader of the conference. We like them. That sure would be a big win for the Bonnies. Arizona versus Illinois. The Wildcats, really impressive early on. That game has some impact. Kentucky versus Notre Dame. I don't think Kentucky beating Notre Dame is that huge. Notre Dame's struggling this year, below 500, I believe. But it's a game Kentucky can't lose if they really want to keep moving up off that 7 seed line for us. Here's a great game, too. If you're in the Cincinnati area, go check out Cincinnati versus Xavier. That's a solid matchup. Both teams have been better than thought of. Xavier's really high right now with some 3 quad 1 wins. Cincinnati has some nice wins, needs to maintain their resume. Houston versus Alabama is another outstanding game. Houston dropped a game to Wisconsin early. That was a surprise. And so they would really gain some steam there. Sunday, Purdue plays North Carolina State, and a great matchup, Villanova versus Baylor for us. So I think we might have Cade popped in here. Cade, a little Wi-Fi issue. Welcome to the show after about 18 minutes. We just got done going through the whole run sheet in a one-man show, but let's just go back to our discussion today and share with our listeners a little bit about how tough it is. Even though the net ranking comes out and it helps us with the data, we had some interesting discussions this morning.
Yeah, so while the net does help us, it only gives us so much. So it'll give us those quad 1 wins and the just net ranking of the teams, but teams still have to play other teams. Like, they still have to have those quality wins. And for teams like Arkansas, who haven't really played anyone but are undefeated, it's hard for us to make decisions on them because other teams have played people but lost, and then we kind of get into a mix-up between which ones to move up and which ones to move down. So,
yeah, that's once everyone's played somewhat of an even type of schedule, then it's really easy to compare. You get 4 or 5 conference games in. The teams are somewhat a little more balanced out. But right now, you said Arkansas. I'll add, Kentucky, Texas. Teams don't have any quad 1, quality 1 wins. They're kind of hard to match up. And I know a lot of other bracket people will predict, well, they're talented, they're going to get some wins. We just don't do the predicting. We just look at the data. Besides those teams, is there any team that made our bracket that was either we'll just go down to your surprise team or your disappointing teams so far in college basketball.
My surprise team was Michigan, just because they were predicted to be a good team. And I know we don't look at predictions, but like just watching their wins and losses in like overall standings, and just to see how far they've dropped over these past weeks and how that causes other teams that may not have been considered to move up. I just think that's weird also to see a top Big Ten team like that to be put so low this early on, because normally when you play early on, you play some of those, like we call it cupcake teams, where like they're almost guaranteed wins, but then you lose one of those games and then it kind of throws off everything. And it was just weird, like I said, to see that. So
yeah, Michigan is a surprise team. They have 3 quad 1 losses. They just haven't beaten the good. The team surprising me is San Francisco. I'm a big fan of San Francisco. Again, that's a team I used to watch back in the 70s, come in and play Notre Dame up where I grew up, and they're 10-0. I don't know that they will stay in the bracket unless they get a couple nice wins. I don't think they're really full of nice wins. So we have some brand name teams out of our bracket early on. Who do you think, when you look at the teams we're considering but did not put in our bracket this morning, which team do you think is most likely to jump back in here in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
I was thinking about Memphis and how they were also predicted to be pretty good. And then just the fact that they're so young and seeing them lose these games early on, I think they're on a 3-game losing streak. Just seeing that and how that might affect a young team, it can really hurt them, but it can also make them better. And then just seeing them mesh over the season and playing more games will definitely help them. But seeing them mesh and find their identity as a team, I think they'll definitely be on the rise here in a little bit once they get their legs under them.
Yeah, they're struggling with the point guard from everything that I hear, and that goes to your identity piece. You're absolutely correct. They just have a couple really good 5-stars that are predicted to go to the pros, and it's shocking when they have a quad 3 loss as well as 3 losses. So, yeah, I think you've picked some really good teams there. I think they'll find their way back in. They'll get some nice wins in the American Conference. For me, it's my Indiana Hoosiers. I'm hoping they make the tournament. It's been 4 long years, and boy, they've dropped a couple games that really would be nice on their resume, and they're going to make it hard for themselves because, in all honesty, I'm a bracket guy as well as I'm an Indiana guy, and I don't think there's even a way to sniff putting them in any bracket as of yet, and so they're going to have to wait until January to find some quality wins. So don't expect the Hoosiers to be anywhere close to a bracket until maybe mid-January, but they're going to have to go on a run of a few games. So we talked before you got back connected, we talked about the schedule. I talked a little bit. You want to talk about Wisconsin, Ohio State? I know Ohio State's your squad. They got a big opportunity coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I want to see them win this game so bad, just because I have a couple friends at school that are liking Wisconsin, and they just don't want to see my team win. And to see them win and then have that good win on their resume will definitely help them out. But even if one of those teams loses, Wisconsin or Ohio State, that'll definitely cause some of the teams in our bracket to shift around and move, because those teams are so high already that there's other teams that are on here. Let me find them real quick. Other teams like Kentucky or Arkansas that are playing some big games as well, that if they can win those games and then Ohio State or Wisconsin loses, then that can cause them to flip-flop, and then that'll definitely obviously be some big changes in our rankings.
One of the things I really enjoy, Caden, and our listeners, is when our young bracketologists start getting the idea of how you rank teams. You know, if Wisconsin loses, we don't automatically drop them and go find a place to drop them because they lose. We just look at the new metrics, the new net ranking, and then say, okay, what did that loss do to the 4 or 5 teams around them? If a team 3 slots below wins and Wisconsin loses, then they might flip-flop. I forget which teams it was today that we just flip-flopped teams from a 5 seed to a 6 seed. We had a discussion that because of recent results. That's so hard to share, Cade, with some people who don't quite understand. It's not a standings page. The net ranking's not a standing. We don't rank the net 1 through 68 teams. So I'm going to ad lib here a little bit because we got you on here late with the Wi-Fi. Here's an example for our listeners of these net rankings. Our top 4 seeds. Purdue is number 2 in the net, which is shocking because Arizona's win last night pushed them ahead of Purdue. But Purdue's number 2 in the net. Duke is number 10, Gonzaga 7, and Baylor 5. And we have those teams 1, 2, 3, and 4 because of their quad 1 wins. Cade, how that's somewhat difficult to get used to, isn't it? When you start ranking these teams, because we're used to standings in baseball, basketball, and the standings are different. But this is that sorting tool that I talked about earlier. It really just puts teams in pockets, and we felt those teams were the best 4 teams despite their numbers. How difficult has that been for you to try to understand that and look at it that way?
I think it's been difficult because you see a team that has maybe a lower net that has played some decent games, but then you see a team with a higher net and you put that team with the higher net above the lower net just because of their quality of wins. But it's weird to see, because normally we go by the numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to see 1, 2, 10, and then 7, it's just weird to get your brain to know, oh, that's because they've played better teams and they've won better games and then things like that, and they've lost certain, all that stuff.
Here's an example of what Cade's talking about. We have Michigan State, the 6th overall seed. They have 3 quad 1 wins and 2 quad 2, so they're 5-2 in quads 1 and 2. They're 15th in the net. Right below them is Arizona, number 1 in the net. But Arizona's just 3-0 versus 5 wins for Michigan State. We believe those 5 wins and the 2 losses that Michigan State have are not bad losses by any means, losing to Kansas. And I forget who else Michigan State lost to right now, but that is a little difficult to do. One more thing, Cade, here before we call it a night. The Big Ten was thought to be struggling a little bit, but Purdue has 3 quad 1 wins. Michigan State has 3 quad 1 wins. Wisconsin has 3 quad 1 wins. Ohio State has 2. And you're looking at teams like Baylor, Kansas, Villanova with only 1. The top 4 or 5 Big Ten teams are really off to an outstanding start, as well as, Cade, Xavier with 3, Providence with 3. You have some Big East teams that are leading the pack in quad 1 wins. That's got to be good for the Big East and the Big Ten as they go forward, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. Those games will help them because once you jump ahead of other teams early on in the season, these early games really do matter, even if they're sometimes throwaway games. But it's not like when we get to March, we're just going to look at the games from the past month or so. We have to take into consideration all the games they've played, and getting those 3 early wins in quad 1 will separate you from a team that was 1 and 2 early on in quad 1 wins. And so, having those teams just switch like that is cool to see at the end.
Those 3 wins aren't going away. The only way they go away is if one of those teams you won drop down a little bit or have a 6-game losing streak, then you might lose a quad 1 win. But even then the committee knows you beat some good teams, and it just went from a quad 1 to a quad 2 by number only. So it's better to have in the second week of December 3 quad 1 wins than it is to have 0. I'd rather be Wisconsin and Indiana right now because those wins are gonna stay there on the team sheet regardless of where the number is. And if you have quad 1 wins, I don't think those teams are going to drop much more from just quad 1 to quad 2. And those are the types of wins that you need your teams, if you're listening to this, to accumulate in order to get in the tournament and get a seed that you like. So, Kate, thanks for hanging with us there on the old Wi-Fi there at school. It's always an interesting thing technology-wise at Delphi Community Schools. We do appreciate you supporting our girls basketball team. We appreciate Luke serving the swim team and the basketball team by working in the concession stand. It's the kind of quality dudes we have at Delphi and involved in Delphi bracketology. So do you have a score update of our ladies? Do you know by any chance did the varsity game get started yet?
No, I don't know. I think they've started, but yeah, I'm not sure the score.
All right. So again, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, get a hold of us and let us know. We might do a question and answer segment coming up. We also might invite some guests from across the country to join us and talk a little bit about brackets. We love brackets. It's way too early to get caught up on if your team's in or out. Don't get mad at your coach if your team's out or your players. They have plenty of time to get in the bracket. We just like practicing this, and we do like sharing our information. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bracket U. And we'll be back next week, and then we'll take a 2-week break for Christmas as us teachers and students enjoy the break. But we'll be back next week. You can follow us at our website, DelphiBracketology.com. There will be a bracket put out tomorrow and a seed list out tomorrow on the webpage. If you're interested in following us, we'll start updating a lot more on Twitter at Delphi Brackets, Instagram at Delphi Bracketology for all your bracket needs and information. Check out our donation page where you can help us with all costs associated with the internet, some food for the guys, T-shirts, and computer cost. If you're interested, we would appreciate it. And more importantly, enjoy your holiday season, and may your team win the big ones, especially the ones on the road.